Hi, in today's video, I'll be covering the 3 most common types of life insurance, the importance of having life insurance, and why you should not depend on a GoFundMe for your final expenses. Welcome to those of you who are new, and welcome back to those who are returning. I'd like to give a disclaimer before I jump into this information, and that disclaimer is I am not an insurance professional. Do not consider this as legal advice. Please do your research before you seek out insurance. Understand the different types of insurance there is and read the policy before you sign on the line. Now, for the most common types of life insurance that you will hear about, the first one is term life. Term life goes anywhere from 5 to 30 years. That is the duration of the policy. After whatever period you pick, that policy will terminate. It is typical to see term life for 10 or 20 years. However, you pay on that policy, and at the end of that 10 or 20 years, you no longer have a policy and you will not get your money back. And then think about, you will also be 10 or 20 years older, which means it will cost you more to get insurance at that point. If you get a term life insurance policy, whatever the face value of that policy is, let's use $150,000, that will be the amount that will be paid out to your beneficiaries. Term life is cheaper than all the other policies, but at the end of it, you have nothing left and you need to start a new policy. Keep that in mind. And then there is whole life. Whole life is just what it says it is. Goes for your entire life, your whole life, if you want to remember it that way. Whole life can gain value because oftentimes they take a part of that, the premium you pay, and they will invest it. It can gain value, which means if you get a $150,000 policy, at the end of it, it could be much more. Most whole life policies have what they call a life benefit. And that life benefit is in the event you get a critical illness, cancer, heart attack, stroke, you can pull from that policy. So let's say you have a $150,000 policy, you should be able to pull, say, 25,000 from it. That will be told to you up front if something like that were to happen, how much you'd be able to pull. Now, if you get a $150,000 policy, it could be worth more once it's time for your beneficiaries to be paid. The third type of insurance is called universal life. Universal life invests money, and the policy could be just like whole life, more than what you signed up for, the face value of the policy after a while. It also has a life benefit amount or benefit. It has a life benefit. Term life has about 4 different vehicles they use to invest, and oftentimes the policy holder gets to choose the type of investment that goes into. So term life is cheapest. Whole life costs more, but it goes your entire life. Universal life goes your entire life, but it's even more because you have the option of picking the vehicles that are invested. Now, some of the important reasons you would need life insurance policy. Number 1 is to cover your final expenses when you pass, depending on how you want, what your wishes are. If you plan to be cremated or have a funeral, there are expenses involved in that, and a policy would more than likely cover those expenses. In addition to your final expenses, if you are married, say married, or have children, or just have a mate that you want to leave something to. When you pass, if you're working in particular, they no longer get that income from you working. And most of us want our families to be able to continue on and not stress about finances until they can get used to not having us there or not having the income coming in. So not only does it cover the final expenses, but it also helps your family kind of keep moving forward without stressing about finances when it's all said and done. In addition to that, if you have debt and they choose to pay those off, they can do that as well. It just helps to take care of final expenses. Now, a note, please think about this. A lot of us have insurance on our jobs, and it's good to have insurance on a job. It's cheap. Oftentimes they can be for a decent or more than decent amount of money. Here's the issue. My example is I was with the county for 24 years. Never ever thought I'd leave the county, but here I am 2 years ago. I left the county, and that is where my biggest policy was. The biggest and the cheapest in terms of what I was paying. But when I left, that policy was cost prohibitive to keep, so I was unable to keep it. Well, thank God, and lucky for me, I had policies outside of the job. So even if you have a job and you have a policy on the job, you need to have some insurance outside the job. In the event you leave the job, you get laid off, you can no longer work, or they fire you, you still have insurance outside of your job. Have a decent policy outside of your job. And insurance is cheaper when you're younger and healthier. So you 20-something year olds, you 30-something year olds, definitely get those policies in place. And evaluate your situation and make sure you're getting enough to cover what you want to be covered. We know that life situation changes at times, and we understand that, but every now and then you might need to go back and evaluate the policy and make sure it's enough. For instance, if you get married, if you have children, go back every so many years and just evaluate and make sure you have enough. Now, the part for the GoFundMe, depending on a GoFundMe. I see a lot of fundraisers for GoFundMes for, people, for final expenses for people that have lost loved ones. And I think most of our situations, if we prepare, we won't have to ask for money or help to bury our loved ones. When you use crowdfunding, GoFundMe, to collect money, you're depending on the sympathy, the generosity, pulling heartstrings of others to donate. There's no guarantee that you're going to raise the money you need for that burial or for whatever final expenses there are. There are times people will give. They give more generously when it's a tragic event that happens to a group of people. A good example of that is the fires we just had here in California, where they wiped out neighborhoods. People are more likely to give to a cause like that. And I get it. I understand sometimes people die through a tragic event. And although we all know we're going to die, sometimes the tragic event brings on that death unexpectedly. And we just need to be prepared, because people, they don't always give. And studies show that people of color in particular raise less money than others. Let's just put it like that, others. And think about it. People who are wealthy, they know how to raise money, and they will raise the money. I just think my message is just for people to try to be prepared. Try to get the insurance when you're younger. I tell my family that if you don't prepare, I won't go broke to bury you. I will contribute to a cremation. I'm not going broke. If it's not important to them, I'm not going to make it that important to me. I mean, it'll be important to contribute, but not where I'm going to miss bills or put myself out to bury this person when they didn't think that it was important enough for them to plan. I just ran across an article for a female basketball player. She played in the women's league. I wasn't familiar with her, but she died like 2 weeks ago, mid-20s. They're doing a GoFundMe for her. And I don't know what the circumstances were, but I do know she was earning money, and I wish someone had put it in her ear that she needed money. 2 other things I want to cover. Number 1 is there's something called a burial policy. Usually elderly people get those policies. They can be quite expensive, and they have an exclusion period, usually 2 or 3 years. If the person passes before that period expires, they will pay the beneficiaries every dime that went into the policy that the person paid into it, but that policy amount they will not pay. And usually that money is not coming before or during the time you need to bury that person. Additionally, parents with young children, Gerber has policies for children. They are really inexpensive. My daughter is now in her mid-20s. I got a policy for her when she was an infant. I want to say I paid it until she was somewhere between 13 and 15 years old. That policy is now paid up. I no longer pay a premium on the policy, and it's good until she's 50 years old. So there are options out there if you jump on it, soon enough. So let me know what you think. Good day.